All right, friends, I am back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. My voice largely intact now after a weekend of rest. Forgive me. Last week, I just absolutely let you folks down, both Wednesday and Friday. I just could not do it. Could not speak on Friday. Was absolutely mute. Much to the, well, I don't want to say satisfaction, but certainly bemusement of my wife. So here we are, Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. Has there been a president who gets more done and generates more news over a Mother's Day weekend, no less, than Donald Trump? That's the question. And it's an important question to ask against the backdrop of some folks out there talking about Trump as a lame duck president, saying he's got just one term. You know, what all can he do in this limited period of time? And of course, this brings up a question of a succession plan. Now, I'm going to get to that in a minute. This weekend has been nothing but a complete and total inundation of good news from Donald J. Trump, from this administration. One thing, of course, China and the U.S. reaching a pause in the tariff war. So they will bring tariffs, mutual tariffs, down to 10% and suspend basically the ramping up of tensions and escalating of these tariff rates for the time being. Pressure does not come off China. This is a great deal from the U.S. I will explain as we delve into that topic. Then, of course, Trump had this enormous announcement that came on this pharmaceutical drug executive order. He announced this yesterday. And the gist of this basically is that the order is signed today, this morning, at 9 a.m. That's at 9 a.m., first thing in the Oval Office. This order is designed to, make U.S. drug prices match the lowest prices paid by other countries. The government will set price targets for drug companies within 30 days. Let Americans buy drugs directly from manufacturers at lower rates, skipping the middlemen. And it'll consider, of course, importing cheaper drugs from other developed countries beyond Canada. All right. Now, look, first and foremost, the way I understand this is it's going to save the Medicare, Medicaid system an enormous amount of money. Our government is the largest consumer of drugs. It's a single payer, right? If you look at the Medicaid, Medicare system. So presumably, right? The more, if the government says, no, we're not going to let you gouge us, it then sets the tone for the rest of the market. Now, Trump had a great announcement, by the way. I get to what he has comments on it. So we had that. Then, of course, we had continuing announcements vis-a-vis India and Pakistan. Tensions continuing to reduce there. And all of this going on against the backdrop of immigration, where Trump has been increasingly making statements alluding to the suspension of habeas corpus. Do you see, Robbie, the tweet from the Lincoln Project? The Lincoln Project puts out a tweet. You know who the Lincoln, right? The Lincoln Project is a bunch of people who hate Trump. They're supposedly Republicans. And they are afflicted with one of the most virulent and extreme strains of Trump derangement syndrome there is. Anyway, they tweeted out a thing, and they're named after the Lincoln Project because they are, of course, wanting to bring the Republican Party, quote unquote, back to the era of Lincoln. which is not like Trump. Anyway, so they tweeted out saying that, whoa, we're suspending habeas corpus. Let that sink in. The internet was quick to remind the Lincoln Project, who they named themselves after, that it was Lincoln who suspended habeas corpus. That's right, 1861, during the Civil War. This was an effort, obviously, designed to be able to detain Confederate sympathizers. Okay? Normal stuff. By the way, Ulysses S. Grant did the same in 1871 in order to combat the Ku Klux Klan. All right? Now, no other U.S. president has formally suspended habeas corpus since then, but Trump's point is this: hey, if the judges are going to continue to obstruct our efforts to remove violent, criminal, illegal aliens who have invaded this country, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to suspend habeas corpus and round these people up and just get rid of the problem. Detain them, send them away, remove them out of the country, and solve the problem once and for all. I'm going to tell you, I think this is well, it may never even come to this. I don't know if he's going to actually do it. Because again, one of the things that is very important to say is the idea of due process, that it is some sort of a court formal proceeding that requires a judge, is nonsensical. That's not how this works. And even CNN last week, I played the clip for you. CNN last week admitted that basically, you can just appear in front of an immigration officer, someone who is reviewing the facts of the detention and approving the next steps for the detainee. And the less time you've spent in the country, and obviously under an illegal status, the more abbreviated the due process would be for you. So a citizen, for example, somebody born and raised one citizenship, U.S., right, in the country, would require a court proceeding, a giant process to have their citizenship stripped. It's not unprecedented. John Demjanjuk, for example, have brought him up before. He's the gentleman who was suspected of being a Nazi guard at a concentration camp, was living a quiet life in Ohio, was an American citizen, naturalized American citizen, was stripped of his citizenship and was deported. It can happen. It's not without precedence, people. Everybody's acting like Trump is the first person that came along and is looking to remove potentially even citizens. You hear this bugaboo in the news all the time. The next people that are up for Trump, he's going to start going after citizens, as if it's never before happened in the country. People just don't know about history. Okay. But the point remains that all of what Trump wants to accomplish may be able to be done without this step of suspending habeas corpus happen. Notice Trump will do this. He'll put something out there, test the waters with it, get everybody in the media to lose their minds and fight against it, essentially shadow boxing because the thing isn't real yet. And then Trump backs away from it and it goes away, and people have depleted their energies. I'm talking about people in the media and the TDS afflicted people, right? The Lincoln Project, right? You get them all wound up. They get all this out. They scream and shout about it for a few days, and then they have to move on to the next thing. Trump has become very good. I don't know if you notice this, very good at draining the opposition. One of the best examples of this is this Qatari jet. Have you been following the story? So Trump, let me get into it. I got to take a quick break. But the point is, I don't know what Trump actually intends to do here. I tend to worry less about what he says, and I sort of react to things once he does them. But I definitely can tell you that people are all wound up over this. And I don't know what I think about it. We'll get to this here. This is the free jet from Qatar, or Qatar, depending on how you choose to pronounce it. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I don't know, Robbie, if somebody offers you a free plane, you think there's some strings attached? It's an interesting question. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Just before I get to the Qatari 747 being offered to the U.S. government, I just want to briefly touch on this question of habeas corpus. The drama started already last week. Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, who is Trump's top dog on immigration and has been nothing short of remarkable in pushing forward Trump's agenda on immigration, held a press conference, was asked about this on Friday. Now, you know, the media is melting down about this, all right? They think that this is the King Trump maneuver, right? This is exactly what they warned us about, Project 2025. Trump was going to seize power, take away constitutional rights, and just run roughshod over the country. The only problem with this is, of course, that Trump would be doing this to advance an extremely popular policy position. A wide majority of this country believes that bad illegal immigrants who are squatting on American soil, who are causing untold amounts of death and destruction in our towns and cities, communities across America, ought to disappear. Poof, gone. Get rid of them. So Miller, says this in the press conference, right? He's got all the hostile press. Listen to what he says.
The Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. At the end of the day, Congress passed a body of law known as the Immigration and Nationality Act, which stripped Article 3 courts, that's the judicial branch, of jurisdiction over immigration cases. So Congress actually passed, it's called jurisdiction stripping legislation. It passed a number of laws that say that the Article 3 courts aren't even allowed to be involved in immigration cases. Many of you probably don't know this. I'll give you a good example. Are you familiar with the term temporary protected status, or TPS, right? So by statute, the courts are stripped of jurisdiction from overruling a presidential determination or a secretarial determination on TPS when the Secretary of Homeland Security makes that determination. So when Secretary Noem terminated TPS for the illegals that Biden flew into the country, when courts stepped in, they were violating explicit language that Congress had enacted, saying they have no jurisdiction. So it's not just the courts aren't just at war with the executive branch, the courts are at war, these radical rogue judges, with the legislative branch as well, too.
Yeah, this is a very important point that's lost on people. Congress, and remember, I keep telling you this, that the president's authority is at its highest when he is enforcing the will of Congress. Congress has previously to Trump being in office made it so that courts, federal courts, all these crazy judges who are issuing these injunctions, these stays, these obstacles to Trump's agenda, immigration agenda, Congress previously determined that these courts don't have jurisdiction. They can't review these cases. They're literally non-justiciable, is what we lawyers refer to this as. Now, I guess this law could be reviewed at some point by the Supreme Court to determine whether or not it's constitutional, but it requires the highest level of scrutiny because, of course, Congress is working in conjunction with the president. It doesn't require the current Congress. It can be a Congress back in the late 18th century, like the Alien Enemies Act, right? Okay, so I'm just telling you, I think that it's not a done deal that Trump suspends habeas corpus. I think that this is an attention-grabbing move on the part of Trump to lay down the gauntlet. All right, courts, you want to keep acting like rogue, judges. You're usurping the power of not just, my branch of government. I'm speaking as Trump, right? The presidency, Article 2, but you're also taking away from the legislative branch. So, Article 1, right? So, you know what? You guys want to do that? Knock yourselves out. I'm just going to go do it my way. I think it's a laying down of the gauntlet. Trump likes to do this. He wants to demonstrate to his opponents in these federal courts that they are insignificant, that they have no power. And in doing so, I've said this from the beginning, the power of the of the judiciary, of the judicial branch of government, is going to deplete in the next few years, because they are running into the buzzsaw that is Donald Trump, and Trump's not going to give this up. Trump knows he's in the right. Trump, for the first time, has surrounded himself with people who've done their homework, i.e. Stephen Miller, and constitutional scholars. Hell, he's been fighting for the last 4 years in the world of what presidential constitutional authority is, because the lawfare that has been levied and pushed and launched at Trump, unsuccessfully, mind you, but launched at him nonetheless, has required a robust defense by Trump and his lawyers of presidential power, of presidential authority, etc. It's almost like Trump in the last 4 years, thanks to the morons in the Democratic Party and in the Biden administration, got a crash course on how the freaking government works. There's a great saying, hoist by your own petard, sort of shooting yourself in the foot, right? Or taking something that is meant to help you and having it hurt you. The Democrats launched lawfare against Trump, which they intended to hurt him with, damage him politically. Did that succeed? Well, conventionally speaking, we understand he's in the White House now, so yes, it did not succeed in no way, shape, or form. But there's another layer to it. I really do believe that the last 4 years, particularly the 2 where litigation, or 2.5, where litigation was very, very dicey and acute, and Trump was being hounded by Jack Smith and special counsel, Merrick Garland, Joe Biden, etc., right? The Justice Department in the last administration, that Trump really did begin to understand, people around him understand what his powers were. And I think one of the takeaways that Trump had, and I've heard this from a number of people that know him, that the realization that Trump had is that he just did not know the full extent of his executive power when he was president in the first go-around. He really thought that there were things that the courts could just shut him down on. He really thought that there were things he just could not do through his agencies. He had people in these agencies who were telling him, Mr. President, you cannot do that. I will, you can tell me to do it, but I can't do it because it's not constitutional. And the team that he had in his first term said, yeah, oh yeah, that's probably right. And they just had no clue. And what was really going on were there were people there, seated deep state folks, Obama, hires, that were sitting there. No, tell him you can't do it. Tell him you can't do it. And Trump just went, yeah, okay, I'm not going to do it. Well, he coming in like, what a Miley Cyrus in the ball, wrecking ball. Yes, exactly. He is coming in, and he's coming in hot, and he knows what he can do, and he knows what they can't prevent him from doing, and he's firing everybody that's standing in his way. And the courts are fighting him on that, but he's going to win. And the whole thing is happening. The drain the swamp promise from 2015 to 2016 is finally coming to fruition. I don't know about you, but I'm loving it. Now, I'll get to the Qatari jet because this all is the setup for it, right? Understanding what Trump does versus what he says and what the implications of this are. I have my thoughts. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. Be back after this, folks. Don't go anywhere. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. You can hear my voice is coming back. It's back. It's just not fully back. So, yes, it's me. It's still a little raspy. My gosh, it's been a week of this nonsense. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. Sam at what'srightshow. And on X, formerly known as Twitter, at What's Right Sam is where you can find me. And you can get the full episode if you want to see the video and you don't have Spotify, but you're on X. You can get everything at What's Right Show. At What's Right Show. Okie dokie. So the Qatari jet, this is a jet 747 aircraft built as a custom private jet, very luxurious, state-of-the-art airplane that's been on the market, is my understanding. It's been for sale for a period of time, and it belongs to the Qatari government, the royal family there. And apparently there's some talk about it being given to Trump, to the U.S. Now, people are melting down. Here's what Trump today, when he was signing his executive order on prescription drug prices, said about the jet when questioned, because there's some reporter, I think it was an ABC reporter, who was a little perturbed by this. So this is Trump's answer. Have a listen.
Mr. President, what do you say to people who view that luxury jet as a personal gift to you? Why not leave it behind?
You're ABC fake news, right?
Why
Because
not?
only ABC, well, a few of you would. Let me tell you, you should be embarrassed asking that question. They're giving us a free jet. I could say, no, don't give us, I want to pay you $1 billion or 400 million or whatever it is. Or I could say, thank you very much. You know, there was an old golfer named Sam Snead. Did you ever hear him? He won 82 tournaments. He was a great golfer. And he had a motto: when they give you a putt, you say, thank you very much. You pick up your ball and you walk to the next hole. A lot of people are stupid. They say, no, I insist on putting it. And then they putt it and they miss it. And their partner gets angry at them. You know what? Remember that, Sam Snead. When they give you a putt, you pick it up and you walk to the next hole and you say, thank you very much.
Respectfully, sir, as a businessman, some people may look at this and say, have you ever been given a gift worth millions of dollars and then not received anything?
It's not a gift to me, it's a gift to the Department of Defense. And you should know better, because you've been embarrassed enough, and so has your network. Your network is a disaster. ABC is a disaster.
So here's what's precipitated all this. Trump is, as a businessman, right? He is he's also a very knowledgeable guy on aviation. He's always been a private jet guy. And when you operate, Part 191, they're called Part 91, Part 135, basically two different FAA categories, licenses that you can operate a private jet under in the U.S. When you're an owner operator like Trump has been, is still with Trump Force One, that he doesn't fly as president, you know a lot about this. You know a lot more about it than Joe Biden. Easy. A lot more about it than Barack Obama. A lot more about it than George W. Bush, right? Etc. He is the one that made the original, revised the original deal with Boeing when he was president in the first go around for the two new Air Force One airplanes, which are heavily modified 747-800 planes. And Boeing, I don't know if you've been following the news, but Boeing basically has screwed the pooch or messed the bed, whatever you want to use as an expression, and absolutely coming apart as a company, is finding its way and has lost its competitive edge. It's my personal belief in all the DEI nonsense that they've pursued. And one of the casualties of this has been this new presidential plane contract. Boeing has gone to Trump and said, we are We are over budget. We are way behind on this. This thing is a mess. Would you consider giving us more money to get this thing done? And Trump is saying to him, no, I made a fixed price contract. I'm holding you to it. It's not my problem, Reed. It's not the taxpayers' problem that you're a poorly run BS company. So sorry, but, we need to stick to this deal. Okay? That to me is the story here. The story isn't the Qatari jet. The story is that we have a president for the first time in history who is making a fixed price contract with a supplier to the Department of Defense, to the US government. So Boeing can't just submit open-ended invoices and keep getting hundreds of millions of dollars from US taxpayers and burn through the cash and not produce an airplane, which is precisely the thing that all of these Department of Defense contractors and government contractors were so used to doing for so many years. This is how they operated. Oh, a government contract? Yay, this is the golden goose. Once we get the contract, we just keep sending in invoices and they keep getting paid and so it goes. So Trump said, no, not going to, you guys are holding your feet to the fire. Now, if you're Boeing, this is an important point because nobody in the media, people in the media, I'm a lawyer, I'm a businessman. So, a talk show host. But because I'm a lawyer and a businessman, I come at this from a different perspective. I have not heard anybody in the media say any of this. Everybody out there, every stupid freaking Republican is wetting themselves over, oh, you can't do this. You can't accept a plane from Qatar. Oh my gosh. Oh no. Ha! Getting the vapors. And I'm reading and I'm going, okay. So Trump said over the weekend that he's holding Boeing's feet to the fire. And he's saying, no, we're not going to pay your cost overruns. Those are on you, not on the U.S. taxpayer. So let me just ask you, if that's the case, what would be the response from Boeing? What would be the response from Boeing as, Trump tells you that? Because I know what, if I were Boeing, I know exactly what I would tell Trump. I would say to Trump, well, then I guess you're not going to have a plane. Mr. President, we know how much you love nice airplanes, and we're going to build you a beautiful airplane, an amazing airplane. Everything's going to be gold and gorgeous and everything. But if you don't pay us extra money, we're going to have to not give you an airplane. And what does Trump say? Trump says, well, you know what? Here's a middle finger, mother effers. I'm going to go get, I'm going to have Qatar give me an airplane. And I'll get another airplane. So we'll buy another airplane. We'll buy 2 new airplanes. We'll send it over to a third-party company that's going to do all the security checks on it and all the, the specialty systems, wiring, etc., that make Air Force One what it is, anti-aircraft, whatever, all the stuff. And we're just going to do it ourselves. And we'll cancel the contract with you. And now you're going to have 2 half-completed airplanes that you can't sell to anybody. And we'll sue you for damages, for liquidated damage. I'm sure we're in the contracts knowing Trump. This is how you negotiate. And I don't know. I suppose there's somebody listening to me right now, somebody with TDS going, well, why doesn't he just say that? Because that's not how you negotiate. Okay? You don't bluff and then tell people you're bluffing. I feel like it's a kindergarten out there, folks. And you know this, right? This intuitively makes sense to you. Now, I don't know. Maybe he's going to take the plane from Qatar. Now, I'd go through it with a fine tooth comb, But considering that we've sent a few $1 billion in military aid to Qatar, they owe us the repayment. Yeah, that's right. Biznatches, send us a plane. Yeah, we've already sent. What have we sent Qatar in the last 20 years? A few $1 billion for sure. Okay. So yeah, give us a. I don't know, what is this on the used market right now? They're tough to sell, these big planes. They're not many buyers, as you might imagine. So the plane might be worth, I don't know, 100, 200 million. Might 400. I don't know. I think that's, well, a brand new 747's a couple hundred, 300 million. Well, you get the whole interior built on it, 400, 500 million, whatever. But, now it's a used airplane. And there's not a big market for it. And it's been sitting for a while. So this is like a big house somewhere in a neighborhood that not everybody wants. And it's really overpriced. And what's going to have to happen to the price is going to come down. So it's not even that valuable in the grand scheme of things. So I just think it's a negotiation thing. And the logical thing I always ask you to do is to follow what Trump does and not what he says. If you practice that, you'll start to see that there's a lot of brilliance going on in him. And this leads me, and I'm going to get to this here next, to the trade deal with China. Everybody's viewing this as a capitulation. Now it's not a capitulation. Let me explain to you when we come back what happened in Geneva. Let me tell you who had the leverage, who had the upper hand, who was, in Trump's parlance, holding the cards, and who wasn't. All right? I'm telling you, this is a blink on China's part. This benefits us. We still have the pressure on, while at the same time getting relief ourselves. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Love the music. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. It means that we're back. That's my cue here to begin articulating my thoughts. So, speaking of the whole difference between what Trump does and what he says, all right, I'm going to bring it to the trade issue. Okay, and by the way, you're listening to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. So over the weekend, trade deal announced with China. Scott Bessent and a team of Trump administration negotiators met with their Chinese counterparts in the Swiss city of Geneva. Geneva's beautiful, by the way, gorgeous. Big lake there called Lac Léman. And it has this giant, I don't want to say it's fountain. It's a giant, water jet. Man-made, yes, of course. It's a big water jet in the kind of, near the shore of the lake, but in the water. And it shoots up, hundreds of feet into the air. And it's called the jet d'eau, the jet of water in French. And it's a gorgeous spot. My father used to live, when he was a young boy, very near to this spot, the city, just outside of the town, actually. So very familiar with it. So they were down there, okay? And they were chatting. And here's the predicament. Let me sum it up for you. Everything I told you last week when I said that China didn't have the cards, that the U.S., Trump, was in the dominant position, still stands. I have read so many stories. This is a little aside. I've heard so many stories from people. Oh, I saw one this morning, as a matter of fact, waking up early. Let me explain to you. This is how somebody started. Some guy, a business guy, but he's like a well-known guy. Okay. Let me tell you, I know what happened in Geneva. I am an American doing business in China. I spent a lot of time in China. Let me explain to you why Trump lost. I'm like, well, okay, tell me why. Well, Trump lost because China doesn't have elections. China doesn't have political pressure. China can weather the storm over decades if they need to. And Trump has a midterm election, so he can't suffer the consequences of a prolonged trade war. How many times have you heard something like that? I have all the time. In fact, I just heard it again this morning, which is why I'm reacting to it. First of all, the Chi-Coms are screwed. That's a technical, nuanced term for having your economy in the absolute worst state imaginable. Their debt is skyrocketing. Their consumer confidence is, abysmal. They stopped publishing their economic stats because they're all crashing. They don't have elections, but they have a population that can get restless. Not that long ago, China's President Xi went from having zero COVID and nailing people shut in their homes if they tested positive for COVID to opening the entire country up. Why? Did he have a change of heart? Did he stop listening to Anthony Fauci? No. He realized he was going to lose the country. There were literally riots breaking out. Now, they were all suppressed, but riots were breaking out across China, and Xi risked getting deposed. There is something called political pressure in China, number one. Number two, every day that this goes on, a company out there like Apple, I'll throw Apple out there as an example, but of course, thousands of companies are going, oh, do we invest another day in manufacturing in China, or do we move it someplace that is likely to be less risky? I'm not saying necessarily move it in the US, but move it to India, move it to Vietnam, move it to countries that are going to be hungrier at making a deal with the US. Okay? That's the reality. Now, let's add another layer to this. Yes. You know what? Bill Ackman said it best. I'm just going to play you what Bill Ackman said last Monday. Now, I've disagreed with Ackman on a lot of things, but he was right about this. You know, Ackman's been very nervous. Oh, we got to pause. We got to pause. We got to pause. But then he finally, last week, said something what was absolutely prescient about why the pause, if it happens, is actually still terrible for China. Bill Ackman, of course, legendary investor and somebody who is, I would say, is certainly more of a Trump fan than not. Okay, so here's what Ackman
right
said.
Thing to do, in my view, is we pause on China. Let's give it a little more time. Maybe it's 180 days because we're going to be busy here. What that does is it stabilizes the risk to the U.S. economy and small businesses around the country. But China is now highly incentivized to make a deal. Why? Because of the shock of 145% and the potential for high tariffs against China. Every company that's producing in China and selling into the U.S. is moving their supply chains elsewhere. The longer the tariffs persist and unfair trading practices persist against China, the longer they take to make a deal, the greater the risk to China is they lose all those businesses. And so the dynamic now is not, in my view, ideally favorable for the U.S. because there's economic pressure on the U.S. as a result of China tariffs. You pause for 180 days, the economic pressure comes off us, but it persists on China because of everyone leaving. And I think I'd like for us to get to that dynamic as quickly as possible.
Well, look, a temporary reprieve in tariffs makes our stock market shoot up. But does it do anything to repair the lack of confidence in China? It's not a permanent deal. I'm sitting here during the break at the bottom of the hour and, got the CBS News going on the station. Those of you enjoying the podcast, be glad you don't listen to this communist propaganda that's on air in between my show segments here. But, but it's not a done deal and there's volatility ahead. Yeah. All Trump has to do is signal, yeah, I'm willing to be reasonable. Yeah, and the markets, look at the markets there. Everybody's like, oh, it's great. All Trump has to do is go, oh, I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to be reasonable. I'm willing to entertain a pause. Sure, let's do a pause. But China, in order to remain viable as an export economy, will have to demonstrate that they are willing to be a reliable trading partner with the United States long term. and because nobody trusts the Chinese communists, because they're pieces of you know what, their stocks, their markets, their long-term investment rating, if you will, internationally, will continue to plummet. It is a death by 1,000 cuts. And so every person today going, ooh, Trump capitulated, ooh, Trump gave up the ghost, again, missing the boat completely, like by miles. And they want Trump, like with the Qatari jet, to get up there and go, oh, but let me explain to you what it is that I'm doing. Oh, let me give you some context. No. Don't talk about it. Don't tell your enemies what you're doing. Just go and do it. Follow what Trump does is my point. All right, don't go anywhere. More of the What's Right show up next. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. I got to tell you, lots cooking. Obviously, I know I will get to this in a moment. But first, Politico did a groundbreaking journalistic masterpiece on Donald Trump, saying that he has only sat for 12 intelligence briefings since taking office. So that is just under one a week, right? I mean, he's been president for 16 weeks. We are today is 113 days of Trump 2.0. So, 25 paragraphs into the article, Politico admits, quote, Biden received 1 to 2 briefings a week. Okay? 1 to 2 briefings a week. And never at all questions, well, did he comprehend them? Maybe Biden needed multiple briefings because he couldn't remember anything that was said in them. Have you ever thought of that? The other part of this is, I just don't think that Trump, and they don't really get into this in the story. I read the piece, Robbie. Trump is not a conventional president, chief executive, in the sense that he doesn't go, okay, today we're going to have a briefing on, what the intelligence reports are. He is constantly talking to people and having informal conversations, right? So he's not there in the moment going, well, okay, we're having our formal meeting. By the way, how many cabinet meetings has he had so far in his term? Compared to Joe. Hasn't he already had more cabinet meetings so far in his presidency than Biden had in all 4 years? I think we're close. So this just is kind of more of the same nonsense that the media is doing. Again, one of the things to watch for here is the media, well, not just this kind of stuff that's intended to denigrate Trump, but they're going to try to make him this lame duck president. Oh, Trump's leaving office. The big red herring, of course, in all of this was Trump's talk of a third term. Again, don't pay attention to what Trump says, pay attention to what he does. In his first term, Trump, I think, very much ran the show, and everyone else was, a kind of a third wheel. And this term, one of the things I'm noticing is he's very much letting people build their individual brands. For example, no one has done more politically, in terms of political capital, for Marco Rubio than Donald Trump. Marco Rubio hasn't done more for Marco Rubio than Donald Trump has now. Without Trump, I mean, look, I understand that in 2016, Trump polished off little Marco, just just sank to the bottom depths of the political ocean any hopes that Marco Rubio would emerge as a viable political player on the national stage. But that's not what I'm talking about here. Look, I mean, Marco Rubio today is far more politically viable than Marco Rubio was, let's say, in 2014. His stock is going up. Trump is allowing him to do this. Same with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is playing a far more active, vocal role in Trump's administration than his previous vice president, Mr. Pence, played at this time in Trump's first administration. These are little things. Trump is building his succession. Whether it's the diplomatic efforts vis-a-vis India, Pakistan, the trade deal, Scott Bessent taking a leading role working through the various networks. And I'm going to take you through some of these press conferences. These are people who are definitely getting their airtime, and Trump has chosen them and is building them up in a way to make their political viability outlast Trump's last remaining term in office. When the history books are written, there will be no more significant, robust second-term presidency than the one we are witnessing here in real time. So it's, it's not for nothing, okay? And, look, I look at the wins, right? India, Pakistan, that, we had a hot war. And the reason that a lot of Americans didn't even pick up on it is because there was no narrative there that they could use to attack Trump with. So they didn't use it. They didn't even talk about it. People, I run into people all the time that didn't know that India and Pakistan were at war. Describing it as border skirmishes is very unfair and very diminishing to what was going on. And Trump and J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio went and ended it. The Houthis have stopped firing on American ships. Eden Alexander was just freed by Hamas, the last remaining living American citizen in captivity held by Hamas. It's a big deal. What's the media talking about? Ooh, airplane from Qatar. These people, the media is like a little cat. You put the laser pointer up on the wall. People do this with their cats. I don't have a cat. I don't know if my dogs would chase a dot on the ground. My cats do this. So you basically wear your cat out by pointing the laser over there and then over there on the other side of the room, and the cat keeps going back and forth. This is the kind of thing, right? This is how they do, and this is the media. But Trump is the one with the laser pointer, okay? Trump is not the cat. The media is the cat. And he'll throw something out there and get everybody to get all wound up. So, it's great stuff. Oh, by the way, did you see the Indian journalist that was losing his mind over Trump making the ceasefire happen? This guy, fresh off tech support. Oh my gosh, this is great. It turns out the media in India is not too far from the ones, some of the people that we have here. Watch, those of you watching, watch this, listen to this. This guy is something else.
It is not the job of the President of the United States to make a claim when we haven't even agreed that this is a matter which requires his intervention. I mean, with the greatest of respect to the American President, he has no idea about the ground situation. He has no idea about what's happening here. Till a few days back, he said that this is not for him to look into. And now he's congratulating both countries trying to be a global peacemaker. And I think this is beyond him. I strongly object to the fact that the US president is saying that he has sorted out the conversation between two countries. I think President Trump does not understand the importance of difference between back channel talks or informal diplomacy or clandestine diplomacy or overt diplomacy. Somebody should
think
teach
this is
him.
typical Trump overreach?
This is typical Trump overreach. This is typical Trump overreach at a time when he does not have a mandate to do so. And I think it becomes incumbent right now for the government to start the press conference, which we were promised at 5:30. If this was a calibrated announcement, which I do not know anything about, then really we will hear, we will go, Republic will go by what our Prime Minister says.
Yeah, well, you have to understand that this conflict from the beginning was a Chinese pawn. Pakistan and India were getting played by the Chinese, who wanted to disrupt a growing friendliness between India and the United States. Where are we going to make the iPhones if China won't because of high tariffs? India came out and said it. Hey, literally, the week that was announced, this war broke out. You're like, Sam, why? You told me the Pakistanis were the ones that were in the Chinese pockets. Yeah, the Pakistanis for sure. But, you know, China's affiliates in India, they're there. These people are bought and paid for. Trust me. Oh my gosh. If you do not understand how China operates, they buy both sides. This is the Belt and Road Initiative. Read up on it, folks. It's there. You know this. If you're listening to this program, you know all of this. But, you know, this clip got played and, Trump is meddling. Trump ended a war. And notice what happened next. China blinked on the trade. My God, if people, please, will you just trust what I'm telling you? I'm not some blithering idiot here on the radio. I know what I'm telling you. I'm right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam & Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, Sam at what'srightshow.com. So if you're just tuning in, it's all connected, right? Trump starts trade war with China. China risks losing manufacturing, technical manufacturing to India. China provokes India and Pakistan into a conflict. War flares up. They think everything's going to now thwart Trump's plans to work more closely with India. Trump comes in, brokers a peace deal. War is over. Trade with India now almost certain to resume. And at the same exact moment, the same weekend, in fact, China goes, okay, we'll agree to a 90-day stay. We'll back down and let's work out a deal. Here's a Trump today at press conference, White House, mentioning pretty much all of this, but you got to kind of read between the lines.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. We helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they have. And they did it for a lot of reasons, but trade is a big one. We're going to do a lot of trade. And we stopped the nuclear conflict. I think it could have been a bad nuclear war. Millions of people could have been killed, so I'm very proud of that. I also want to thank Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio for their work and efforts. They worked very hard on that.
Again, Trump building up potential successors, ensuring that the MAGA movement remains firmly entrenched in our political system well beyond his term in office. But what is he saying? He goes, it's about conflict and about trade. And, what's the old hippie saying? Make love, not war. Trump's whole thing is let's trade and not go to war, right? This is what he's doing with Ukraine and, in fact, with Russia. Hey, let's just enter into a business arrangement. Let's forget the war. Let's do business. And he's made this overture to Putin as well, who is not being, I think, too enthusiastic about it, although we've had some developments there as well. Putin agreeing to some framework of direct negotiations, which we have not had since the beginning of this conflict. Okay? So there's progress being made there as well. It's good stuff. And the naysayers will, of course, it's all, all just being, this is all just bad news. Now, Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, came back. He's still, I think he's still in Switzerland, still in Geneva, but he did a segment on Joe Scarborough this morning on MSNBC. And he talks about the strategic decoupling from China. Listen to what he has to say.
Well, Joe, this is going to go where the president wants it to go. I was in touch with him over the weekend, and he wants free trade, free and fair trade. We've had free trade, and as you said, that has not worked for the American people. There's something called the China shock, which has gutted our manufacturing sector. And China has a different form of government for us. They have a different economic model where they subsidize labor, they subsidize capital goods, and they have exported that to us and the rest of the world. We have put up tariffs to push back on that, so it will be a matter of what is the equilibrium level on tariffs and also getting China to open their markets for American companies. Because China actually has a low tariff regime, but it is the non-tariff trade barriers that can be the most difficult to overcome. So we will be focusing on the non-tariff trade barriers and the subsidies, and the idea that China can become more open to American business, and the things that are sold into the U.S. Can not have the same level of subsidy. And no one wants to do a generalized decoupling, but we are going to do a strategic decoupling because we realized during COVID that efficient supply chains were not secure supply chains. So with steel, with semiconductors, with medicines, with a couple of other strategic categories, we are going to have to become self-reliant again.
Well, this is exactly right. You remember COVID. China shuts down and all of a sudden we can't get stuff. Who was at the store trying to get toilet paper? Anybody? Okay. Medicine. This is bad. Semiconductors. Remember when, in the wake of COVID, cars weren't getting built because we were missing chips? You couldn't. I mean, you go, wow, I want a made in Germany. I remember this. I was one of the lucky people. I moved into my place here in Las Vegas right before COVID, and I was holding off on a washer dryer or a new one for my unit, and I finally ordered one right before the shutdown, okay, in March, and I remember I was one of the last deliveries of a local supplier here in Las Vegas for these units, and they just stopped after that, and they stopped. There was some in the warehouse. But new units weren't being made because new units, all needed chips and they were coming from China, even if the unit itself wasn't made in China, it was made somewhere else. This is what he's talking about. And our markets are going up. Meanwhile, Scott Bessent's saying, well, we may not really use China for everything. And again, that is bad news for China. It is good news for us that we can say this out loud and not have the markets freak out. And then I gotta mention this. The Chinese, one thing that Scott Bessent said is that the negotiators in the room, had this to say about Joe Biden in the previous administration.
January 2020, President Trump produced a template. We had an excellent trade agreement with China, and the Biden administration chose not to enforce it. The Chinese delegation basically told us that once President Biden came into office, they just ignored their obligations. So, we already have a large framework.
Yeah. So it was all done. All Biden had to do was to follow what Trump had laid down. And the Biden people walked away from it and let China walk all over the United States. And by extension, us, we the people. Well, just letting you know. I mean, and Biden has the gall to go on television. Oh, we're best administration, and this guy's ruining everything. Ha! LOL. As the kids say. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Back in a moment. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. Well, here's an example of some of the problems back home in China land. That's right. Well, I mean China, right? Not back home, but for, those of you who are listening from the Chinese consulates, read Chinese police stations, tracking the What's Right show and this reactionary anti-Chinese propaganda you hear Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Welcome to the program. This is a great story. Exactly. Robbie, thank you for sending this to me. Protests erupt in China after furious workers demand back pay as Trump's tariffs on imports jolt economy. This is in the New York Post. I'm looking at pictures of some extremely unhappy Chinese people who appeared to be dressed as workers. They're wearing little hats, little vests, and they're standing around, and I think they want money. Well, those people are not going to be happy with the government. Will they express it? Well, maybe not go online and write long essays about how President Xi is leading China astray, but they're going to, people who are not working, people who are not paying their bills, that's a political liability. At least 16 million jobs across many industries in China are at risk due to President Trump's imposing of a 145% tariff on Chinese imports. This according to Goldman Sachs. Quoting a 26-year-old toy factory worker. Maybe this is one of the guys, Robbie, that builds the bubble guns. Right? The bubble gun man is 26. Well, we were told there was going to be no more bubble gums. Say that fast. Bubble guns. Thank you. You put batteries in it, you fill it with the detergent, a bubble formula, whatever, and you press the gun and it shoots out bubbles. It's a lot of fun. But the only place I guess they can make that possibly in the world is China. So we were told Americans expect no more bubble guns. Quote, it's not easy at the moment. Again, this is the 26-year-old toy factory worker. All right. Yeah, that's an understatement. Construction workers threatened to throw themselves off buildings they are working on unless they receive their unpaid wages. This is in a northeastern city in China called Tongliao. This according to Radio Free Asia. Okay. Protests in China have increased since the COVID pandemic as the country's economy has struggled to bounce back. Why are they struggling to bounce back? Because President Xi of China, the top communist in China, decided that China was going to have zero COVID. He was like Governor Sisolak on roids. Shut everything down. They were literally, you saw the videos of some family came down with COVID and they would padlock them into their apartments. The police would come by in hazmat suits and nailed, boards across their front door, locking them basically in their apartments. Those were the drastic measures. Well, the strategic decoupling from China began before Trump's tariffs, before Liberation Day, because a lot of consumers of Chinese goods across the world realized that China, if we had another thing like this happen, or conflict or war, it doesn't help that President Xi keeps touting his war plans for Taiwan. People started to realize, hey, look, he goes and invades Taiwan and China becomes the new Russia. And we have to, for political reasons, say, okay, we're not dealing with, we're going to put sanctions on China and block them from the world. We already began thinking of other sources, other places to have our goods made. This just puts it all over the edge. Back to the New York Post piece. In April, China's factories' activities showed its steepest contraction in 16 months. Yeah. So we have the leverage. This is my point. Trump is doing this the right way. He's getting people to come to the table. And it's huge, right? It's working. Yeah. Well, by the way, did you see the speaking of COVID, coming back to this gain of function research? Trump did that. He signed another executive order, this time banning gain of function research at the White House. This this is what they were doing. Fauci was sending money to the lab in Wuhan. These people gave us COVID. Okay? Listen to this.
The first relates to gain of function research. Gain of function research is a type of biomedical research where pathogens are adulterated, viruses are adulterated to make them more potent or to change the way that they function. Many people believe that gain of function research was one of the key causes of the COVID pandemic that struck us in the last decade. What this executive order does, first of all, it provides powerful new tools to enforce the ban on federal funding for gain of function research abroad. It also strengthens other oversight mechanisms related to that issue and creates an overarching strategy to ensure that biomedical research in general is being conducted safely and in a way that ultimately protects human health more.
It's a big deal. It could have been that we wouldn't have had the problem we had.
I'll tell you, Brett Weinstein, who is an evolutionary biologist focused on bat diseases, he was very good on COVID throughout throughout the virus, says this is going to save lives. All right. It could very well be in the millions. So this is all I'm telling you. Things are happening and being done, and Trump just keeps us powering through the weekend. I have so much to talk about, not just because I wasn't here on Friday, but because the weekend. He keeps working. He stacks everything up, and then boom, Monday morning, 9 a.m., everything comes down. When he was this is all part of the press conference too on the prescription drug pricing. He told a great story to illustrate what the problem is with drug prices. Yeah, I don't know who he's referring to, by the way, but he threw his fat friend under the bus. Trump could be a comedian. He's wildly entertaining. Listen to this.
I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called me up, and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy, very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on?
I mean, it's a great question, but see how he illustrates the point? Trump just makes the point with a funny story, and he leads people in. It's so good. So here's RFK Jr. Dems promised action on drug prices for 20 years and never delivered, says the guy who a minute ago was running as a Democrat against Joe Biden.
I grew up in the Democratic Party, and every major Democratic leader for 20 years has been making this promise to the American people. This was the fulcrum of Bernie Sanders' runs for presidency, that he was going to eliminate this discrepancy between Europe and the United States. But as it turns out, none of them were doing it. It's one of these promises that politicians make to their constituents, knowing that they'll never have to do it. And the reason they'll never have to do it is because they know that Congress is controlled in so many ways by the pharmaceutical industry. There's at least one pharmaceutical lobbyist for every congressman, every senator in Capitol Hill, and every member of the Supreme Court. By some estimates, 3. Pharmaceutical companies, the industry itself spends 3 times what the next largest lobbyist spends on lobbying. So this was an issue that people talked about, but nobody wanted to do anything because it was radioactive.
And now the question we have to ask ourselves, sort of 3, 2, 1, here we go. Cue the Democrats, right? Now the Democrats are forced into position because reflexively, anything that Trump does is bad. And tomorrow, I'm sure we're going to play some clips here of the evening news programs talking about how terrible and pernicious this is, and how these poor drug companies ought to be allowed to continue doing this. Oh my goodness. And suddenly you're going to get Democrats to be big supporters of the free market. I can't wait for this. Now, I'm just going to tell you what this is all about. It's a little stunty, right? The president can't direct a private company what price to set for a good. Can't do it. But the president can set, Medicare prices, can set the amount that the federal government is willing to pay for a drug. And that pricing then will trickle down through all the layers, because, that's going to set the pricing. And for years, to RFK Jr.'s point, we've allowed the federal government to overpay for drugs because people who are affiliated with the pharmaceutical industry have lobbyists who are influencing members of Congress and presidents, right? And everybody, right? Everybody involved. Follow the money. So RFK Jr. is like, okay, look, we finally did this. Now here's Jay Bhattacharya talking about the activities. This is, excuse me. Hold on a second. I'll get to that in a moment. But RFK Jr. said Trump can't be bought, right? All this money that's circulating around Washington, Trump can't be bought.
President Trump was taking money from the pharmaceutical industry, too. I think they gave you $100 million. But he can't be bought, unlike most of the politicians in this country. And he is standing here for the American people. I don't know what, there's writers like Lord Elizabeth Warren or Robert Reich who are saying that President Trump is on this side of the oligarchs. There has never been a president more willing to stand up to the oligarchs than President Donald Trump. So I'm just so grateful to be here today. I never thought that this would happen in my lifetime. I have a couple of kids who are Democrats, are big Bernie Sanders fans, and when I told them that this was going to happen, they had tears in their eyes. because they thought this is never going to happen in our lifetime. And we finally have a president who's willing to stand up for the American people.
Oh, absolutely. Now, does this, I don't know if this moves, but it could, right? Like you're watching in real time Trump take away positions from the Democratic Party, make them his own. All right. But here's the thing. A lot of this, and we'll get into this more as the week goes on, this actually, the argument for freer markets, even though this might appear to look like price controls, it actually promotes freer markets by countering the price fixing schemes, all right? There are price fixing schemes, okay? There are, we literally are overpaying for these drugs. And Democrats could have tackled this, but they didn't. They talked about it. This is the same, I'm telling you that Trump is doing an end run around all these people. So what Trump says, the order, by the way, says that it ties the U.S. prices to the lowest prices abroad. So if you're selling it, the drug somewhere, for $20 and then trying to sell it for $400 in the U.S., can't do it. So global price competition, not control. And it targets these anti-competitive tactics. It is price gouging, okay? And it's, and look, and it also clears certain regulatory hurdles that are important as well. Okay, I got to take a break. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. What's Right show brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. All right, welcome back, folks. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Some news over the weekend I wanted to touch on because it is a little bit in my wheelhouse. There is, let me see here. There's a story of an attorney based, of all places, in California. I think she was based in Newport Beach. At any rate, a lawyer named Sarah King was just sentenced to 21 months in prison. And she essentially stole $9 million of her client's money and went to Las Vegas, where she lived at the Wynn Hotel for months. Yeah, I think she lived there 6 months or so at the Wynn and gambled it all away. So wild. She had a company that was like a boutique lender, and she was based in Newport. Yeah, I see this here. Yeah, she was in Newport. That's where my other office is. Interesting. Don't know this lady at all. But she claimed to do a high interest loans to famous individuals like sports stars, and that, she basically solicited investors from big funds to give her money, invest money in the scheme. And instead of actually creating loans, it's kind of a Ponzi scheme. She just used the money to, to pay back other investors, and of course to fuel her lifestyle, which was pretty lavish. $8.7 million to be exact from 5 investors. She gambled away right here in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. 6 or 7 million of that just at the Wynn Resort. This is wild stuff. Well, there is no shortage of attorneys who do this. I've talked about this for many times. I always will tell you, be wary of any lawyer who is too ostentatious with his lifestyle. Be wary of it, because you've got to, if you have a lawyer out there who is just being a little bit too flashy, then the concern is, I don't know. I mean, some of them are flashy, and I'm sure, just living within their means. But this always happens to people who cannot keep it in the guardrails. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it. So, I mean, this is, I see a lot of people advertising in California, in Nevada, these lawyers, and they're putting out ads where they're on their private jets and they're racing their fancy cars and they're doing all this stuff, and it just is off-putting. And it raises, I'm not saying they are, I'm just saying it raises questions. And this lady, her Instagram was covered with lifestyle, just ostentatious lifestyle. Well, it blew up. So anyway, just had to share that story. Well, how do I segue from that to Jasmine Crockett, a crazy Democrat? Well, I just want to play this clip from her. This was Friday on Sirius XM with Clay Kane, and Jasmine Crockett made waves again. She is the congresswoman from Texas who is African American, and she is, kind of a low rent looking person and sounding person. Well, anyway, here's what she said, and I'm gonna end with this here. Oh my gosh, crazy.
We just want to win. So there's a lot of people that are like, you know what? Like, let's go find the safest white boy we can find. I mean, I'm just saying.
Those are the callers that we're hearing. We're hearing people.
No, for real.
A white man's got to do it. We're getting those callers.
For real. And to be clear, when we talk about them, I can tell you that there is one specific candidate. I had a donor on the phones with me telling me that all the donors are lining up behind that candidate. So I can tell, and I can tell you, it's not a black person nor woman, okay? So like it is,
White
they have,
man.
quote unquote, they have chosen, and when I say they, it's the same donors that most likely had their opinions about Joe Biden and moved. So like that would be the they that I would talk about.
Who do you think that could be? The white man who's the chosen one on the Democratic side. Gavin Newsom. All right, folks, I'll see you tomorrow. We'll talk more about it then.